The divers went in expecting a wreck. What they found looked like someone had just left. Bottles upright on shelves, drawers half open, papers still on a desk. HMS Terror, sunk 1848, untouched for 170 years. Except it didn't look untouched the way a shipwreck looks untouched. It looked untouched the way a room looks when someone walks out and doesn't come back. The Franklin expedition left England in May 1845. 129 men, 2 ships, 1 mission: find the Northwest Passage. They were the best-equipped polar expedition Britain had ever launched. Reinforced hulls, steam-powered engines adapted from a railway locomotive, 3 years of canned provisions, a library of over 1,000 books. They had thought of everything. The Arctic had not been consulted. By the summer of 1845, both ships were spotted by a whaling vessel in Baffin Bay. The crews were reported as healthy, confident, in good spirits. That was the last confirmed sighting. They were never seen again. For 170 years, the Arctic gave nothing back. Then, Canada found Erebus in 2014, Terror in 2016. And when divers finally entered Terror's hull in 2019, they stopped talking. The ship was sitting upright on the seafloor. Depth, 24 meters. Hull largely intact. No catastrophic breach, no violent collapse. She had settled the way a ship settles when it is placed there, deliberately, evenly, without drama. The interior told a stranger story. Windows closed, doors shut, cupboards sealed. The lower deck still holding food stores, organic material still present after 18 decades submerged in near-freezing water, 2 degrees Celsius at that depth, cold enough to slow decay to almost nothing, cold enough to preserve a moment. But here's what the cold cannot explain. Bottles do not stay upright in a violent sinking. Papers do not stay on desks when a hull is breached and water floods in at force. Drawers do not hang half open, mid-search, when a ship goes down in chaos. The physics of catastrophic sinking do not produce this scene. Something else does. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what the official record said happened. In April 1848, the surviving crew abandoned both ships. They left a note, found years later in a cairn on King William Island, stating that Franklin had died in June 1847 and that the remaining 105 men were setting out on foot toward the Back River, hundreds of miles to the south. None of them made it. Search expeditions over the following decades found scattered graves, skeletal remains, abandoned equipment, evidence of lead poisoning from poorly soldered food tins, possible signs of scurvy. And in the most disturbing findings, cut marks on bones that suggested the survivors had, at some point, resorted to cannibalism. The official conclusion was sealed around a single narrative. The ships were abandoned, the men walked, they died, end of story. The wreck of Terror suggested the story had another chapter. When the research team analyzed the ship's position in Terror Bay, something immediately didn't fit. Terror Bay is not where the ship should have ended up if she drifted after abandonment. Ice and current patterns in that region would have carried an unmanned drifting vessel in a different direction entirely. Terror Bay is southeast of where she was last documented. Moving a ship of Terror's size, 326 tons, 103 feet long, to that location required navigation. It required someone at the wheel, someone who knew what they were doing. The ship didn't drift there. She was sailed there. The Inuit had been saying this for 170 years. Oral accounts passed through generations of communities living in that region described the Franklin ships long after they were supposed to be abandoned. One ship, almost certainly Terror based on the described location, was still crewed, still moving. Manned by a small group of survivors, months, perhaps well over a year, past the official abandonment date. Inuit hunters reported boarding one of the ships and finding a single dead man in a bed below deck. Others described seeing thin, desperate men on the ice near a vessel that was still intact. One account described smoke, suggesting the ship's stove was still being used, still burning, still occupied. Western researchers heard these accounts and called them mythology. They called them unreliable. They called them secondary sources, not suitable for the historical record. The wreck of Terror called them a primary source. 3 theories now exist, none officially endorsed, all three under quiet study. The first, deliberate scuttling. Survivors returned to Terror after the main party abandoned her. They kept her operational. They sailed her, intentionally, to the sheltered waters of Terror Bay. When the end finally came, they sealed the ship room by room, methodically and carefully, and sank her on purpose. This explains the closed windows, the organized interior, the half-open drawers of someone who was still looking for something when they ran out of time. If this theory is correct, it means people were alive on that ship long after history recorded their deaths. It means the official account is not just incomplete, it is wrong. The second theory is the conservative position. Terror sank slowly due to gradual ice pressure and hull damage. Water entered incrementally over time. Nothing was violently displaced because nothing happened violently. The near-freezing water preserved everything before decay could begin. No survivors, no deliberate act, no one at the helm. Just a slow, quiet descent into darkness. The interior condition is remarkable, but explainable. The third theory is the one that aligns most closely with Inuit oral accounts. A small surviving crew sailed Terror deliberately to Terror Bay as a last act of calculated survival. They used her as a base, stripped her of what they needed. Then they left, on foot or by small boat, and the ship sank on her own afterward. What happened to those men is unknown. Whether any of them reached an Inuit settlement and survived, even briefly, is unknown. Whether any of them made it far enough south to leave a trace that has not yet been found, also unknown. The absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. The research teams involved have been precise in their language. Careful, non-committal in a way that is itself worth noticing. Because the Franklin expedition is not a neutral piece of history. In Canada, it carries political and cultural weight. It is bound up in questions of Arctic sovereignty, in the mythology of European exploration, in the long and unresolved history between colonial institutions and indigenous knowledge. Confirming that Inuit oral accounts were accurate all along, that they held the correct version of events while Victorian historians dismissed them, is not a small revision. It is a structural one. It asks how many other official records were built on the exclusion of Indigenous testimony. It asks who was granted the authority to define what counted as evidence, and it asks what else might be wrong. Funding bodies have interests, institutions have reputations, academic careers are constructed on established conclusions. When physical evidence begins pulling at a 170-year-old narrative, the first response from those institutions is rarely immediate revision. It is usually delay, careful, professional, well-worded delay. There is one detail that tends to get lost in the broader story. The wreck of Terror was found partly because of information provided by local Inuit communities. They knew the general area. They had always known. Researchers with sonar equipment and research vessels confirmed a location that Indigenous oral tradition had been pointing to for generations. The technology found the ship. The knowledge of where to look came from somewhere else entirely. Terror has been on the seafloor since 1848. The information about what happened to her, the real account, the accurate one, was never actually lost. It was held in communities, in oral tradition, in accounts that failed to meet the source criteria of naval historians who had never set foot in the Arctic. The ship waited 170 years to be taken seriously. The people who knew where she was waited longer. And the question that Terror leaves open, the one that reaches far beyond this wreck, beyond the Arctic, beyond the 19th century, is not about one expedition. It is about the architecture of what we accept as history, how it is constructed, who gets to contribute to it, whose account is filed under evidence and whose is filed under legend. Because somewhere, right now, there are communities holding accurate knowledge about events that official records have described incorrectly for generations. The knowledge exists. It has always existed. The wreck of Terror didn't reveal a secret. It revealed a method of ignoring what was already known and calling that ignorant scholarship. The ship is still down there, at 24 meters, upright, preserved, waiting perhaps for the next question we haven't thought to ask yet.